had I not had that kind of support, I don't know what would have happened, because Lance, I was so terrified I was going to make a bad decision and it was all going to be over. Like all the things that I'd worked for, that I'd done with school and all that, I was like, how do I keep this going?
Step into the Fieldhouse, your front row seat to legendary victories and untold stories. Hey, I'm your host, Lance Lunner, breaking down sports from the inside out, along with co-host Jimmy Lackey. It's more than just a game. It's the Fieldhouse Podcast. Hey, welcome into the Fieldhouse Podcast. It's a production of the Kids Inc. Sports Network. We can't thank you enough for joining us again today. I'm one of the co-hosts here, Lance Lunner. Other co-host, Jimmy Lackey here, main man at Kids Inc., CEO, whatever. Jimmy, how are you today?
Awesome. But
Why are you awesome?
I'm feeling like a third wheel real here. I got two media moguls here that really know what they're doing behind these microphones.
One media mogul, and then we have us. Okay.
And then this hack over here.
No, not at all.
I'm glad Andy's here. We've been wanting to have him on, so I'm thrilled
forever.
that he's
So
here.
everybody knows Andy Justus in Amarillo. He is the face of KMR Channel 4, and then is heavily involved in the community, things like that. Does he hosts parades? He's just done it all. But best thing about Andy is he is what he is. I've known him for a long time, and even though it's a little old Amarillo, Andy, people get the big heads, the cockiness, the egos, and you've always avoided that. So I appreciate that about you. I just want to say that before we get going.
Well, God, it's nothing that I've done. God is good to me, and He has been very good to me, and He's just, I just feel blessed. And it's the same as you guys. Like, I love Amarillo. I'm not going anywhere. And so you just get to, our friendships have been, decades in going. So it's good. But thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Hey, our first question is kind of corny, but I love the question. What's the best thing that happened to you today?
The best thing that happened to me today, very trivial. My coffee maker was not working, and I got it working this morning. Like I woke up and my wife says, I'm kind of getting the sleep out of my eyes. She's like, "Hey, the coffee machine's not working." I'm like, no, this can't happen. This can't happen. So, and not much has happened because, I go to bed so late from work and I wake up. And that was the very first thing this morning is I went in.
So you a fix-it guy?
No, I'm not. I just hit it really hard. I'm not. I try to do the best I can, but I'm not very inclined. I kid you not, it was this weird coffee machine that we have. I'm pretty particular about my coffee, and we got it working. So
nice.
Are you a coffee grinds guy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too. So here's a little tidbit.
Okay, give it to me.
So everybody gives you that fancy coffee maker, and then you get the little Keurigs because those are cool with the cups and all. And I went down to Walmart one time and I bought a $20 coffee maker, and it outlasted all of them. And ever since then, $20, get 2, 3, 4 years out of it, and it crashes. We just go get another $20 coffee maker, and it does the very same thing. But we are coffee snobs.
Yeah.
So Toot & Totem's Texas pecan coffee is my favorite coffee.
That's it for you.
That's what I drink. And so I went to Andrew Mitchell and I said, I want to know where you get this coffee. And I found it, and that's what we order, and that's what we drink. And it's every morning. And when we don't have it, we have to go buy a regular can of Folgers. It's just not the same. It's okay, but it's not the same.
So I buy, we're the same way in my house. We only do one coffee. It's from Palace. It's their Duke coffee. And I order it 5 pounds at a time. Yep. And in our little machine, you put it in and it grinds it for you. And then it makes basically, then I'm at that point just drinking Americano, just espresso with hot water. And that's my thing.
I don't drink coffee.
Good for you.
I do the
I
Mountain
didn't until I was
40.
40.
You do the Dew?
I do the Dew. Way too much.
You owe me one of those. By the way.
I do owe you one still. So, hey,
we bet on the Georgia-Texas game. And we bet a Mountain Dew.
We bet
I wanted Texas to win, but
hey,
I just felt like Georgia.
Didn't.
Yes,
No,
I did. No, I did.
I'm not a betting man, but I called a friend of mine who is a huge UT guy. And I enjoy watching UT. I root for Texas, all the Texas teams for the most part. And I called him and I said, hey, I'm not a betting man, but I'd take Georgia on this one.
Yeah.
And he was like, really? And I said, oh yeah. I said, I gotta I got a feeling.
Yeah, they're just
Well, because I knew Texas had to lose at some point, and they're playing Georgia, and it just
Georgia used to
but
the
I
big
love what he's
games and-
doing there. I'm glad to see that program back on top. It needs to be on top, and
Yeah.
you know, I like that A&M's been playing well, and you know, I like to see our Texas teams do well. TCU, when they were having their run, it's nice to see the Texas teams doing this.
So what happens this weekend? Tech, Colorado.
You know, you can't figure out Tech, obviously. What they did last week upset Iowa State. But, man, you know, Dion's in the house. His son's such a good quarterback. I don't know. I really don't know. I think Tech may win one that they're supposed to win. So,
Yeah.
now that they're bowl eligible, all the pressure's off.
I would say
I love Joey McGuire, but he makes some crazy decisions in the late game decisions that I think may cost him down the road.
if it was in Colorado, I'd say Tech didn't have a chance. But weird things happen at Jones State. Weird things happen. So I don't
know. Yeah, I'm going down to that game. My high school coach was Gary Barnett. Used to coach at CU.
He called you Flea.
Called me Flea. Good memory. Good memory.
I remember that. Yeah. 'Cause
He gave me the nickname Flea. And we were talking about it before the show. We both wrestled 98 in high school. And so that's when I got the nickname Flea from him. So I thought I had lost that in college, you know?
Yeah.
And then we actually, you know, I don't know, we were walking across campus. Somebody was, hey, Flea, what's up? And it was, you know, somebody we hadn't seen for a long time.
That's crazy.
And then it just stuck. But those are great memories. Anyway, Barnett, he wasn't sure on Dion, you know what I mean? But real quick, I got to ask you guys, and this is one of the questions I had planned, was did you see Dion's comment on Lubbock?
Yeah.
He goes, Lubbock, Texas, where they throw tacos. And
He was going fajitas.
He goes, which one is it?
Yeah, which one is it? That
Yeah.
one guy goes,
It's
no.
tortilla.
Well, do tortillas hurt when they hit you? You know, I promise you. You know, they've really calmed it down since back in the day. You were down there covering stuff way back in the day, but
Bam Morris, I remember Bam Morris covering
all those
him.
tortillas.
Yeah.
Now they've calmed it down, but it's going to be massive
there'll
on
be
Saturday. So,
tons of them.
hey, this is podcast 28 for us. We have a tradition here. What's your favorite number 28?
So Andy, I started cheating. I remembered a couple weeks ago, my dad gave me this book. Who wore these different numbers? And so, because we were getting to a weekend where I think it was 25 or something, I was like, I don't remember.
Hand me that book, Lance. Let me see this thing.
And so I had one coming in. I told Maddie, I said, I've already got my deal for today. And
I know
was,
mine.
And I was wrong. I was thinking Everson Walls wore 28, but for the Cowboys, he wore 24. But if you look him
24.
up, he did wear 28 for the Browns. When he played for the Browns.
No, he wore 24. He's in the famous
Sure.
picture.
Yeah.
In the
So
catch.
then I thought, well, I know who my second would be, and it's actually the face of 28 would be Marshall Faulk.
Marshall Faulk's a
Oh,
really
man.
good one, really good one. Mine
That's
being
a
a
great
Colorado Rockies fan, which there aren't a lot of us out there, but I am one. Nolan Ariando,
He's in
the
that,
third
he's
baseman.
He's one of the lists.
He's with the St. Louis guy now, but whenever we got tickets for Coors games at Coors, always set by third base any chance we could get to just watch him play.
Yeah.
I love a defensive player. Andy, as you look at that,
He's
who's
not
your
in here.
all-time 28? Oh, yeah.
Darren Woodson.
Okay.
I think.
There's 2 pages. Of
There's 2 pages, so
I
he would have been on the
guarantee he's in
backside of
there.
Darren Woodson.
Yeah, well, he was back. That was back when I was doing sports, and I was like knee deep in it. And he was one of the Cowboys that I really liked. I thought he was a good person. You know, in covering those guys, you kind of get to know a little bit.
Yeah.
And
You guys were down
I
there a
thought
bunch.
Darren Woodson was.
He's the real deal.
Should he be a Hall of Famer?
Yes,
Okay.
I think so.
I would say yes, but I'm biased. I need to tell you that like straight up. I mean,
No, I think hands down he should be.
because that's when it was fun to be a Cowboys fan. Like it's not fun right now. Like it's like it is painful. But
Tell us about that. As a I'm a Broncos fan, obviously, so
Yeah.
we're used to the rough times, you know. But I've never seen the Cowboy fans, Andy, this early, so upset, so like jumping off the ship.
Younger
for the
audience
year.
may not know Andy was a sportscaster.
Yeah,
before he
and we'll get
became
to
the
that.
lead.
Yeah,
just a
but
second.
just so
Yeah,
he's
4 or 5 years.
he's got a real background in this stuff.
Yeah. He does. He's passionate about it. He plays a bunch of fantasy
oh
football.
my goodness, fantasy football.
The whole thing. But anyway, I've got to ask you, why do you think they've jumped off so early?
I think the writing is on the wall. I don't think it takes much if you watch it. Like I watch all the Cowboys games and you watch it and you're like, this is something that's off. And here's the problem is it's this systemic issue with the Cowboys, and it all comes back to Jerry Jones, right? Like you're sitting there watching them spend I mean, how do you spend that much money in the offseason and you get worse? Okay. That is a cultural problem inside that locker room. I just saw them spend that money. And I like Dak Prescott. I like him as a player. I like him as all those things. Do I think he probably needed to make that? I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
As CeeDee Lamb, I mean, that's a lot of money. And so now when you pay your quarterback that, and that quarterback's name is not Pat Mahomes, how are you going to fill out the rest of your roster? And then they make boneheaded moves. Again, giving up a 4th-round pick for Trey Lance last year. He has not seen any really significant game time. And meanwhile, in the 4th round this past year, that's where all those decent running backs were going. Your Bucky Irvings.
Yeah.
You had some really good running backs go in the 4th round, which the Cowboys never addressed that. And then not even to bring in Derrick Henry, even to kick the tires.
Yeah.
He's leading the NFL.
Lives in Dallas.
Lives in Dallas.
Yeah.
Like, is the guy, it's so easy, right? Not that I think it would have made that big of a difference because the Cowboys aren't good. And then again, just recently, now again, I nerd out in the weeds of football. So, and I love Jonathan Mingo coming out of college. I thought, man, it was great. Carolina took him in the 2nd round. I was like, man, that's a really good pick. It didn't flesh out. He's playing on the worst team in the National Football League, and he can't get on the field.
Yeah, exactly.
And the Cowboys go.
Because he can't catch.
Cowboys say, I'll give you a 4th round for him.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Hopkins is going for a 6th round. Mike Williams at the Jets getting traded to Pittsburgh for, I think, his 6th or 7th round. And we're giving a 4th round pick, a valuable 4th round pick for somebody that's not. I mean, I don't know.
So that you just think it's the whole.
It's Jerry Jones,
they're
man.
just tired of it, huh?
Well,
but here's the deal. And I always say this. He flies from his Highland Park mansion to the games, Andy, in a helicopter. Watches the game, talks to the media, gets in his helicopter and flies back home. I think he lives next to George W. Bush.
Mm-hmm.
So what's he doing wrong?
I think it's I think there comes a time, and there's going to come a time in our careers where we have to say, we don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
Right. For whatever reason, it's time to not I think that touch is gone. And the fact that this entire generation that's watching football right now, they don't know of they don't know the history of the Cowboys and know that he wants it so bad.
Yeah.
And just can't seem to get there. He falls in love with these players and has done that, whether it was Marion Barber or whatever, overpaying these players. And
he's a loyal guy.
Yeah.
He is a loyal guy. That's one thing that he doesn't get credit for.
Yeah. And I think you've got a good person in Will McClay. I think most of the time they do a pretty good job in the NFL draft.
Well, what they have to do, they have to let somebody else be a GM and let him be the GM and make all the decisions, see how he does. And then you need to kind of go back to, boot camp, if you'll call it, and no more tours, watching guys lift weights and things like that. You got to kind of hunker in and get back to the basics. I think that would help them a lot.
You're right. And I've read that a lot of times from players that are in Dallas that leave Dallas and go to these other places. Now, what is happening at the Star right now? I mean, it is amazing.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
But football's not the number one thing, I feel like. I feel like there's a lot of window dressing. And I think those players get down there, they get distracted, and they get back. I like that hard-nosed football. Now, here's something. Mike McCarthy's not going to make it. If he makes it to the end of the season, I will be surprised. He will not make it past that point. So do you bring in a Bill Belichick? Who do you bring in at that point? Or who even wants to come into that facility? I don't know.
I think you just nailed all of it because we've talked about this. Jones has to give up the player personnel side of things. He has to. Belichick is very good at that.
True.
Put him in a role like that. But Andy, this has been my point on the coaching side in today's world. You've got all these millionaire, egotistical people that you've got to motivate day in and day out. The Dan Campbells, the Dan Quinns, those kind of coaches can get in their face and motivate them. McCarthy's time has passed.
Yeah.
And you've got to find one of those, McVay, those kind of guys. You've got to find those young guys, Shanahan, those kind of guys that can motivate those egos.
Right.
As a coach, let your player personnel people do their thing in concert with the coach. Coach has to be involved in that.
No, that's a great point. But you can leave the McCarthys as the offensive coordinator.
Sure.
He's fine with that.
Yeah.
But you do have to have kind of the nerds at OCDC. They're just crazy good at making play calls and motivating, but you do need a motivator now.
I think
as your
Lynch. I
face
think John Lynch does one of the best jobs in the NFL.
Yeah, in San Francisco. Yeah,
of just bringing people in. You mean?
Yeah, I think he's one of the
Yeah,
best.
yeah. That's how you build a team. You know what I mean? So, hey, Andy,
Yes,
you have
sir.
a very amazing story starting out, and you attended Boys Ranch, and we've
Mhm.
talked about it, and you're very proud of that, and you do a great job promoting that. What happened? But I've got to ask you. Tell us.
Okay.
Go way back to little Andy Justus. First day at Boys Ranch. Your head hits that pillow, and what are you thinking? Like,
Oh, I couldn't breathe. The tears were coming down because for those of you who don't know my story, I grew up here in Amarillo. My mom had an 8th grade education. She's working at truck stops and restaurants. I mean, we're not making ends meet. I mean, we are financially disadvantaged. That's how I'm going to leave that there. And I asked to go out there. I mean, we had such a crazy childhood. I
how old
asked to
were
go
you
out there.
like at this point?
At this point, I'm 12 years old. So this
Okay.
is July 15th, 1985. I go out there. And again, this is something I wanted to do, right? And so I'm going out there and I'm thinking, man, this is so exciting. I'd already taken a tour. This was something I wanted to do. And I go out there and the reality when I was in room 1 of Weigel, I'm on the top bunk. And the tears are coming out. And I'm thinking to myself, what have I done? Because 12-year-old Andy could not see ahead of him at that point. I could only look and realize I just left my mom. And I'm out here I'm in a room with 23 strangers in a dorm of 23 strangers. And then, I can hear the laughing. Like they know this is a regular deal. New kid gets here, cries himself to sleep. And that was it. I just cried. I cried the whole time and woke up the next day and tried to get it figured out. And man, it was hard. There were honestly, as much as I love Boys Ranch, that first 2 years, it was hard. There wasn't a time that I didn't see my mom where I said, hey, I think I made a mistake. I want to come home. Because I wanted the structure, I wanted all those things, but I mean, the structure was you wake up at 5:30, you start working on your dorm chores. Then once you do that, you go wait tables at the dining hall, and then you go to school. It was just there was always something, and then I started I was so far behind in education wise. I was two grades behind at least in math, a grade behind in English. I struggled. I'm pretty sure that it was dyslexia at that point. I was in remedial reading all throughout elementary school. And I'd go to these special classes. And I had just gotten so far behind, and I pulled out a report card. I hardly ever went to school. So that's why I was behind. I
got you. Yeah.
I get in there, and then all of a sudden, when you have to go to school and there's not a choice, it didn't take long till I was like, oh, I've got this. I've got nothing better to do. So I just studied and I got on the AB honor roll and I saw my name on the board and I was like, well, that's kind of cool. Right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'm like, well, I'm going to see if I can make all A honor roll. And I just got addicted to it, that achievement level and seeing it for the first time ever of having a coach or somebody come up to you and say, hey, I saw what you did. That's a good thing. You did a good job. And I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was first night. Cry myself to sleep.
I was just fixing to ask you, so who was that house parent, that teacher, or that coach that you really immediately gravitated toward? Because I know a little bit about Boys Ranch.
I have so many, Jimmy, but the first one really that made the connection with me was Pat Waldrop. Okay, so there were several Waldrops out there, but Pat Waldrop, and she was she worked in the school. She was the school secretary. So you walked in, she was the first person you saw. And she was the first person that I felt that saw me.
Yep.
And every time I would walk in there, she'd make my day. And then I started finding reasons to just go in. And and I remember I got spanked one time. It was for something ridiculous. And I was getting spanked in the room right next to her because my buddy, I think it was Bobby Faulkner. I just hip checked him into the lockers, just being a guy. Yeah. And one of the teachers saw it. Next thing I know, man, they grabbed my arm and I ended up, and I came out and I could see the tears rolling down her eyes. And I was like, she feels empathy for me.
Yeah.
And I mean, that just rocked my world. I was like, and so anyway, it was, Pat Waldrop was the very first one.
Yeah. Was
Is that
Mr.
Lyndall?
Waldrop the superintendent out there at that
So
time?
there was, Lamont Waldrop was the superintendent.
Yeah.
So,
Was that Lyndall's mom?
no,
that would have been
that was his aunt. Yeah.
Okay.
And so Roger, it was Pat and Roger Waldrop was the athletic director, basketball. He was everything. And so I remember I wrote her a poem. In Mrs. Ray's class, we had to write a poem. I wrote it to her. She was the first one. After that, really, and it's the person that my kids call Papa to this day is Coach McCauley. He was our basketball coach, and then he ended up being the athletic director and became my dad.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there was a lot of them. Denise Green was my theater teacher. Like she was the one that really pushed me into becoming who I was in terms of seeing some talent and seeing some things like, hey, you've got something here. You're not afraid to speak in front of anybody. And so she wrapped me in. But that first moment of Pat Waldrop seeing me for who I was.
So when you graduated Boys Ranch, when you walked across and got your diploma, I mean, did you look back and say, wow, this is something that I should be proud of?
Yeah, definitely. I was the first person in my family to graduate, and to see how happy my mom was, knowing that I wouldn't have made it.
Yeah.
Had I not gone to Boys Ranch.
Fair
I mean,
enough.
my older sister quit school in the 8th grade to take care of us. My mom worked a 2 to 10 shift at the truck stop, and so there was none of that, and there was this feeling. But all of a sudden, as joyful as that was, I was terrified because now the guardrails were going to be off. Okay. And I was, again, how I grew up, where my family was at that point. My dad had come back into my life at this juncture. And I was like, what happens next? How do I keep going? For me, I knew it was the education part. I knew that was my way. And luckily my best friend was Trey McCauley. And Trey's dad was Jack McCauley, who ended up being my dad. He was my roommate in college, and we did everything together. And his family just really took me in. Had I not had that kind of support, I don't know what would have happened, because Lance, I was so terrified I was going to make a bad decision and it was all going to be over. Like all the things that I'd worked for, that I'd done with school and all that, I was like, how do I keep this going? And then I had the great thing of mentorship is the most important thing that we have, that I don't think that we give it enough credit. All of a sudden, I had some other mentors that take me in at WT and started pouring into me, saying those things like, I believe in you. You've got this. Keep going.
Yeah.
And so it was those mentors in college that all of a sudden I found some really good mentors, because when you grow up and you don't have a strong family unit, you don't have, and I was always so jealous of that, because I had friends whose parents were they were so involved and and I just didn't have that.
It's always there.
So then those mentors became my family. And so
I know one of those that was at the head of that list.
yeah.
She and I started school together.
Yeah.
When we were freshmen, they knew her as Bunny Browning. In the professional world, she became known as Lee Browning.
Mm-hmm. Bunny Lee Browning.
And she was head over heels
Yeah.
over this guy.
Yeah,
in
she
terms
changed
of
my
his
life.
talents.
Yeah.
What he could do, what she knew he could do. She and I talked all the time.
Yeah.
He had no clue about this because we started school together. And so, but there was a time, and I'm gonna go ahead and just break into the story.
Yeah, you told me there was a story.
Yeah, there's a story. I'm gonna break into this story because I don't know the whole story, so I'm gonna let you tell it, but I know a little bit about it.
Okay.
You and I believe Steve Myers and Kelly James went to San Antonio.
Oh, it was me and Kelly.
Okay, and something happened on the Riverwalk. I'm gonna let you tell the story.
Okay, so let me tell you how we get there. First off, this is I had graduated from WT. I'd saved up. I wanted that WT ring more than anything in the world. And I was having to save up my own money. So I was working. I was doing side jobs at radio stations. I was doing everything I could to get some money, and I saved up, and I was so excited to buy that ring. And I got that WT ring, and it was so excited. So I was still, at this time, I was still connected to WT, but I was spending the summer working for Channel 7. Okay. And that's when like Kelly kind of took me under his wing, and I remember getting the call and they said, "Hey, you're going to go to Cowboys camp." And I was like, "What? I get to go to Cowboys camp with Kelly James?" I'm like, "This is amazing." So we go to Cowboys camp, and then from Cowboys camp, this was the last year of the Houston Oilers. They had just drafted Steve McNair, and they were doing their camp in San Antonio. Okay. So Kelly and I did the Cowboys camp. We got in the car, we drove to San Antonio, and we were doing it. And I was still technically in college. I was working on my graduate
Where was Cowboys
stuff.
camp at this time?
St. Edwards?
Yeah, I think it was at St. Edwards.
Gotcha, in Austin.
In Austin. Yeah, that's where it was, St. Edwards. And then so we hopped around. We were just, staying at Motel 6 and just hopping around. And we were like, man, this is our last really chance to go down there. And I wanted to see Steve McNair. I'm like, this is the best. So we get down there. Kelly and I go to the Riverwalk, and we had a couple of cold beers, right? And we're walking back along the Riverwalk, and I kind of act like I'm going to push Kelly in the river. It doesn't happen, just whatever. Well, like 2 minutes later, we're walking, we're getting ready because we're going back to our car, and Kelly goes to push me, and I trip, and I go in.
No way.
I'm reaching out, but I'm reaching out with my right hand. I got that WT ring in, and I'm trying to grab Kelly. I fall in, ring comes off.
Ooh.
At this point, it's like 1:00 in the morning on the Riverwalk in San Antonio, right?
You're in the Riverwalk?
I also need to tell you, I'm terrified of water I can't see in. Okay. So I'm in this nasty river.
Yeah.
But I'd had enough liquid courage where I'm like, I'm not getting out until I get that ring.
What?
Yes. So at this point in the game, I'm
Could
diving
you see
down.
anything?
No, nothing.
Okay.
I mean, it's pitch dark. You're closing your eyes and it's all field. We were pulling up because there was a Mexican food restaurant right there. So I'm down there. I'm pulling up a Mexican food restaurant, and I'm pulling up forks and knives and all of these things. And this police officer finally comes over. You're not, by the way, they can ticket you for that.
Yeah.
I tell him the story, whatever. And at this point, we just reek. It's so bad. We go back to the hotel. I'm like, I cannot believe I did this. The next day, we go back. We cover the Houston Oilers camp, and then Kelly and I go to Walmart and get some stuff. We're trying to fish it out. We're down there, and needless to say, I never pulled it out.
Wow,
I never got the ring back. But then I had somebody, a good friend of mine, Aaron McReynolds, his parents he was a great athlete from Miami, phenomenal football player. His parents took me and Larry and Judy, and I would spend holidays with them, and they were just so sweet and so kind. And they surprised me at Christmas, and they had gotten a special ring made. It wasn't the same WT ring. It looks a lot like an A&M ring. And so that's
the reason I know that story is because Lee called me. And I was running the alumni office at the time.
Oh, yeah.
So we sold the rings.
Yeah.
She goes, Jim, you're not going to believe what happened. And she's telling me the story, and I'm glad you told the whole thing because it's classic. But she said, we've got to get him a new ring. I said, well, whatever we got to do, let's get it done.
Yeah.
And money came in, and we made that happen.
Yeah. It was. I
never saw you on the receiving end of it. I just know how it happened.
Well, it was amazing. I remember going there, and that's when they revealed it to me. It was around Christmas. I was spending Christmas in Miami, and I opened this ring, and and it was so much better than the ring I had. It was like perfect. I still have it. It was great. And Jimmy, thank you for being a part of that. I have dreams all the time where I have to either go back to Boys Ranch. They're like, hey, you didn't graduate. And I'm like, wait, what? But I'm like, I have kids. And they're like, no, you've got to come back out. Or I'm at WT. And it's funny that you brought that story up. I had a dream the other day, and Lee Browning was in the dream, Dr. Browning. And I was back at WT in that old facility. And I think our minds take us back to those happy places.
Yeah.
And so, I literally had that dream, and it was like Bunny she was just there, and she was just perfect. So I want people to take from this, be a mentor, have a mentor, have people that are going to speak life into you, and also speak in those hard times when you're not doing, I remember guy Paul Yates and Lee Browning. I had a semester where I was struggling to keep my head up. I wasn't focused or whatever. And they sat me down and we had a hard talk. And be okay on the receiving end of that. Know that that stuff is coming out of love, but mentorship matters. Mentorship matters.
So do you think the way you went through all this is just hitting me because when I started the Globe News, I was what they call the agate clerk, okay? I had to get a job in Canyon at a gas station from 6 a.m. to noon, to help pay the bills, the little bills I did have. But so the little agate in the scoreboard page on the back, that's what they call you, the agate clerk. You're not even a sports writer. I'd just been fired from the Canyon News.
You're just putting in numbers.
You're typing in like, let's say Andy Justus just ran the remember the old 10Ks, like the
Dean Kelly run,
Westgate Mall,
which would never happen. I'm not a runner.
Yeah. But anyway,
yeah, I get it.
But all those little things you saw in there, that was my job.
Wow.
Like all the cross country results, that was my whole job. Okay, so it's the lowest of the low at the sports. So that's the reason I'm saying this. Every day I walked into the Globe News for 38 years. I said, I'm not getting fired today. I'm fighting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have that same mentality, it seems like to me, from walking across. It hit me when you said, I walked across, got that diploma, but what's next? How am I going to get this next thing done? Do you still that's how your life and why you've achieved what you've achieved?
Yeah, and I think, and I've said this before, it's probably not a healthy place, and I probably need some therapy on this. True, I always have a fear of losing it all.
Yep.
When you grow up and you're living meal to meal, and you're growing up with family members in jail, you have what I experienced prior to going out to Boys Ranch. No kid should have to experience that kind of stuff.
What you saw.
Right. And so in my mind, I feel like if I stop moving and I stop running, that it's going to catch up. Yep. Right. And so that is this external motivator of like, man, just keep going. And I tell my wife and my kids this all the time. I feel like I'm living somebody else's life. If you had told me back then, when I was crying myself to sleep at 12 years old on July 15th in 1985 in room 1 of Weigel, if you had told me, hey, this is going to be what God has in store for you, this is what is going to happen, I could not have written all of this down and said, this is exactly what I wanted to do. I feel like I'm living my dream. I'm in a place that I love. I'm surrounded by people I love, doing what I love, and I just think I'm so afraid of waking up and realizing
you're driven by the same thing I'm driven by. I'm driven by the fear of failure.
Yes.
I am driven by the fear of failure. Yeah. Always have been.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Yeah.
And again, whether that's healthy or not, I don't know, but it's what keeps me going.
Obsessed with it, but I think it's very healthy. I think the proof is in the pudding. Speaking of that, a lot of people come and go, but they're in your position. Andy, you're whether you want to admit it, you're a face of Amarillo, but you have really decided to jump into the community in helping, charities and things like that. You don't have to do that. You know what I mean? I realize there's ratings and exposure and all that junk that I hate about the media.
You and I feel the same about that.
I know you do. So why did you decide to be a community-minded guy?
Because it's what matters the most, right? Like if you're just going through the motions, like that's not it. I think it's the personal relationships that we make, and it is pouring into the community that you love. I feel like so many people poured into me, whether it was Bunny Lee Browning, or whether it was Guy Paul Yates, or whether it was a Jack McCauley or a Denise Green, whether it was these people that were pouring into me. I feel like I owe that, and especially like when Boys Ranch calls. That's the one thing. I literally talked to Richard Nettlekoff the other day, who's head of Boys Ranch. He was like, hey, can we get on your schedule for next year for the rodeo? I said, absolutely. What day? If Boys Ranch calls and asks, I feel like that is a debt that I can't pay, no matter what I do. And so then when you get involved, I'm like, this weekend, I'm going to MC the Veterans Day Parade, right? my job is not hard. It's to sit there and to talk people through things. And it's something that I truly enjoy. And I feel like we just have to do that. Your community is what you put into it. And so then from that, I'll do that. I'll go show a couple of houses because I'm a real estate. Talking about fear of failure, that's why I started selling real estate 10 years ago. Because being in our business, we never know when that corporate person comes in and says, hey, you've been doing this too long. You make too much. We've got to make cuts.
Yeah.
And I never wanted to be that person that all of a sudden, again, because I'm afraid of like turning around and there's nothing there. I was like, how do I create a safety net for me that if I'm not doing this? And so then I started my real estate business 10 years ago. And it's something that I love, but it's that thing that if that rug were to be pulled out from us, Lance, because we live that every day. Don't get fired today. Don't get let go today. So you're working. If that gets pulled out, I'm like, hey, this is a career that I established. I don't want to stop doing what I'm doing, but I wanted it to be there. So I'll MC the Veterans Parade. I'll go show houses, and then I'm going to MC the Colorful Closets event that night. I just think we owe it. I wish I had more money to give, and I don't. And so I give my time.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that people, you're not just a face.
Do you wing it a little bit when you MC, man? I'm not nearly on your level, but I've MC'd a few events, and man, I'm grinding. I'm writing out notes and all this.
That's who you are. But and again, whether it's this or anything else, Lance, you're one of the most prepared people I know. And you don't ever take anything. There's not a 50% Lance. There's 100% Lance, right? It doesn't matter if you're doing this or you're doing something for a coach or whatever, you're doing it 100%. With me, I do. If I start thinking too much and I feel I will get overwhelmed and I'll kind of start to shut down. And so I just take it the next step at a time. Okay, I'm like, what's next? And I've done enough of those, Lance, through the years where I've done enough of the Veterans Day parades. I know how it works, and I have a feel for it.
About that. Yeah, you do a great job.
Well,
you really do. And I think
love
the spontaneity that you bring is amazing.
Well, it started at WT, actually. Like, really, I would get asked because I was in the communications department, and they would say, hey, we need a student person to do this. Mm-hmm. And I got very comfortable at an early age because of what Denise Green made me do in high school about being up on stage and competing in speech and debate events and all these things. I never felt uncomfortable in front of a group.
Wow.
I spoke when I was a junior in high school, biggest group, I think it was 10,000. I was the vice president of this organization called VICA, Vocational Industrial Clubs of America, and I'd been elected their Region 5 vice president. So I would get up in front of these people and it just didn't matter to me. I felt comfortable.
Yeah.
So as I always say when I'm emceeing those events, whether it's Colorful Closet or the Power of the Purse luncheon, I think of it like this. I'm a bus driver. And I have to make a certain amount of stops. So you give me the stop sheet, and I'm like, okay, I have to do this, that, and the other. And it's just to get from one point to the next.
It's bullet points.
That's it.
You're good at it too, though.
Well, sometimes I'm gonna tell you what I enjoy doing and what I know there's one thing I've got to work on. I'll tell you what that is. I'm getting better at. I just want bullet points. Maddie and them know. I say all the time, just give me bullet points. Mm-hmm. Big wall, big words, lots of dead space. That's what I want. That's how I get messaging. Don't give me a thesis. Mm-hmm. What I've got to learn to do, and I did this yesterday with a phone call, I get into the weeds in the discussion and I get to talking too much, and I need to shut up because I'm trying to give every single detail so that I know the person I'm talking to understands where it started and where it ended. Well, I can get there quicker if I just gave them the bullet points. And I've got to learn to do a better job of that because I'm so animated in terms of I want to tell you the whole story.
It's your passion, though, Jimmy.
It is.
It is plus and minus, right? Like, because you want to get into the weeds of it because it's that you truly care so much. And so you want to pour all of that out. You're like, this is why I want you to have the same passion I have. And this is why.
Here's what I tell folks. Years ago, Charlotte Rose now, Charlotte was our board chairman, and she called me one day. She said, I want to come in and work a day in the office. I said, great. I'm going to have you come in on roster deadline day for fall sports. So 5 sports going on. I mean, this is back before electronics was real dents in our world. And so she comes in, she goes, what can I do that will make a difference? Said, answer the phone and just tell them, I'm going to find out who the best person for you to talk to is, and I'll get right back to you. She did it all day long. And at the next board meeting, she goes, you people have no idea what this staff does. And that's the best communicator I could have ever had for somebody to try to tell what I tell people all the time. You have no idea what our staff does.
Yeah.
To get 18,000 plus kids on teams. I mean, they deal with some of the craziest situations. And it's sad situations sometimes. You get I'm just going to use an example. You get a dad register the kid, and the mom and dad are not together, and the mom doesn't get the information. Well, the mom's calling wanting information, and in this day and time, what are you supposed to give out? And so, I tell our staff, we're not getting in the middle of domestic issues. Both of you come down here, y'all work that out as adults. Be adults about this. Do what's best for your kid, but they don't want to do that. They, I registered them, and I need the information, and they don't get it. Well, if you're both custodial parents, you're both going to get the information. And as far as we're concerned, and I mean, stuff like that we deal with. And,
I'm sure. Yeah,
but it's
in our little world. Parents and sports, as Andy knows.
We're only as good as our teammates.
Yeah, totally. That's well said.
Yeah,
Andy.
Okay.
However, you are a journalist. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
We've talked about all this community, and journalism is not an easy business. You know what I mean? But sometimes you have to draw that line. Man, these are hard stories to do. What's one of the toughest stories you've had to do, and what's one of the most rewarding, in your opinion, you've done in your career?
Oh, that is hard. That's a good question, Lance.
I know that's a lot, but
I think it might be the same story.
Okay.
So throughout the years, working with Children's Miracle Network, doing those telethons and everything, we would have to do these stories and these kids facing, a Wilms tumor. I met a young lady who was, she was so tiny, but she had a Wilms tumor inside of her. It was the size of an NFL football. And you meet these remarkable stories, and then it puts into perspective of the stuff that you go through, and you're like, man, I'm not dealing with anything. And you have these things. So the hardest story is Madison Niebusch. And it was a story that, it's the only story I've ever had to stop in the interview because I was crying. I find out about this story, and if you don't know the Madison, it's the MTK Foundation. The reason why that exists, it was because of Madison Niebusch, who was this amazing, amazing young lady that I never got to meet. And so she had passed away, and I'd heard a little bit about her story, and then I reached out to her father, Levi. One of the harder phone calls I've had to make, and I said, in the most caring way possible, it's like, I understand what you guys have gone through. I want to tell her story. I want to know her. And so I went to Levi's house, Levi and Shannon, and I went to their house and I sat down with them. And meanwhile, her room is exactly the way it was. When during her final days, they brought her home and she had passed away in the room. And they take me in, and I'm seeing this, and this family is being so vulnerable and so and I'm just weeping. And I go back, and then at that point, I'm like, I have to do this story justice. I have to make sure I tell this story. And so I tell this story. It's very hard. One of the more proud that I've ever been, because I get it done, and I bring him in, and I never do this. I never let people preview stories.
Yeah.
I don't do that.
Yeah.
And I wanted him because it meant so much. So I bring him in, and then the tears are just coming down, and I get emotional thinking about it. And he said, thank you. So then from that point, it goes to, I create a friendship with Levi, and then next thing I know, I'm on the board, and we're creating the MTK Foundation to make sure that these families going through cancer, they know that at least they have somebody to talk to. They have somebody that can help answer whatever questions they have, or if they need just dinner that night, we'll bring you dinner. And so to be on the front end of that, it was the hardest and probably the most rewarding that I ever had. It was, I would say, it was the same story. It's the hardest, and at the end of the day, it was the best.
So you never got to meet Madison.
I never did.
Wow.
But I feel like because of talking to her friends and talking to her family members and being able to tell this story of this courageous young lady who knew at the end of the day they had done everything, whether it was I remember them telling the story about those blood transfusions that they would get from Coffee Memorial, that meant the world to them because that's when she would have her best days, where she would go in and get
That's
get
when
this
we met them. I mean, my wife was one of those blood stories, and so through that, we got to meet Shannon and Levi, and actually got to meet Madison. Had a cookout over by Tascosa High School one time as a fundraiser, and she came out there just as bubbly as can be. I mean, she was that cool kid to me, and you wouldn't know there was anything wrong with her when we had this deal that day, and it's really one of the only times I got to spend any time around her. But I know the story, and know Shannon and Levi, and good people, and what an honor for you to get to go do that.
Yeah, that was amazing. You did a few at the Globe News. That when they let you in like that, you feel obligated to just do your best.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we just went through that with Coach Broadhurst.
Oh yeah,
Totally.
Right. So
Totally.
when because he's such a, I was telling a story the other day. We had Max Preston who got to know Coach Broadhurst for a year.
Sure.
I was like, he was there when I was there, and I was telling about how he always made you feel like, 'cause there are some tough coaches right, but he always made you feel, he had that smile about him, and just always saying, "Hey, Coach." I always love going to Randall. Coach Wilkerson.
Wilcoxon.
Oh, yeah.
You're
Coach Wilcoxon,
Yeah.
Coach Broadhurst. They always did such a good job of making you just feel
I agree.
pretty unique. And so
he went through life. He made it look easy. You know that?
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about that at his service. He just went through life and made it look easy. It's not that easy.
doing what he did.
Yeah, I know.
Right? Like,
you shake your heads. 38 years at one high school. You know what he went
Coaches
through.
either get fired or they retire,
Or get frustrated with what's going on around
Right.
them.
Get out.
Yeah,
and he didn't always have the best years. Like there were years where he had great teams, and then there were and so you take a look at those coaches that we've been able to cover like that. Wilcoxon was one of them, and then obviously down in Canyon, Coach Lombard. I mean, it's that is a hard. These coaches have some of the hardest jobs in the world. They don't get paid much. The amount of time they have to spend, not just in the classroom or whatever else, but they're surrogate parents to a lot of their kids.
Yep.
And so, man, I'm so glad that we've had some Hall of Famers that we've been able to
We've
cover.
Been blessed.
So,
I have one last question for both you guys, if you don't mind.
I could talk all day. This is so much fun. I get to hang out with two of my friends and get to talk about anything.
Hey, we appreciate you opening up, though. It means a lot to us. This has been amazing. And we could ask him a bunch of other questions, but you both are in a public eye, and so whether you know it or not, like when you're in public, people may be looking at you, and Andy, even more since you're on television and all that. So do you feel pressure to be on, and by on, I mean, hey, the bubbly, the, nice Andy, the nice Jimmy, do you guys feel that pressure day in and day out, and how do you handle it?
Jimmy, I'm interested in how you handle it.
I don't ever want to be the lights, camera, action guy.
I do know that. But,
I don't.
But fair
what I mean
not,
is
you're
going to get from, I'm 63 years old. At this point in time, you're going to get from me what I think, not what I think you might want to hear. And I'll be honest, that's probably changed over the course of time.
Yeah.
When you're younger and you're trying to get somewhere and, you want to say the right things. And I'll give you an example. Dealing with parents. In our business, parents can be tough.
Yeah, they are tough.
And I can't.
It's their kid.
And I don't. It is, and they're right when it's for their kid.
Yeah.
But they're not always right when it's for all of our kids, and that's the difference in the line in the sand with us sometimes. And what I don't want happening is I don't want my frontline staff or anybody else to have to deal with those hard situations. Just send them to me, and very seldom do I ever have to get involved because that's how good our staff is. But when I do, you have to sometimes let them know that's how the cow eats the cabbage, and we're going to do what's best for all of our kids in our program, not just your child. But I don't ever want to be, the lights are on, so I've got to talk this way.
Okay.
I just
Yeah.
tell
That's
you,
how
like,
you handle it.
I'm not the raw guy. I don't have that face and
Well, I don't have the face either. I don't know how
exterior. That's probably the biggest mistake I made with this podcast is letting Maddie do cameras too. But it doesn't bother me. He talked about talking in front of people. My gosh, people that knew me in high school, just leave me in the closet and I was fine. I don't know where getting in front of people all of a sudden didn't bother me, but I did learn this, and I think it's still true. I think people's biggest fear in this world is public speaking. I think it's one of the greatest fears most people have. It's just not one that I have. I'm not looking for it.
Yeah.
I that phone rings and it says KMR TV. I'm like, oh geez, what's this one about?
Yeah.
Who screwed up? And
then I get a text like right after that, Andy, what's this about?
Yeah.
And that's one of the great things. The relationship I've always had with Jimmy is Jimmy.
That's cool.
Like,
or he'll call me and say, hey, heads up on this deal. And
Yeah.
I like those. I like to know that there's something possibly coming. And
We both gave you a heads up.
100%.
Yeah.
That's. I think that's doing your job. I think that's building those relationships with the people that you have to have those with. The media doesn't scare me at all. The media has been great to us. People are scared of the media. I'm not, because they've been our friend. Yeah, we're going to screw up just like everybody else does, and we're going to have a bad apple come through our program every now and then that we're going to have to account for.
Yeah.
But they're fair with us. I can't ever say, and I'll start year 30 in a week.
Wow.
I can't ever say one time in this position that I thought the media was unfair with us. Not once.
That's good.
Not once. Print.
well, I think
Public
Podcast.
speaking and heights.
Right.
A lot of people are afraid of heights.
Yeah, but this is the thing that it goes back to. It's about relationships, and that's one of the things. Like Lance and I have been able to do what we've done because of the relationships that we had with you, being able to call or text or whatever else. Because we're not just some journalist that's coming into town. I want to get my resume together. I want to get in TV. I want to get my reel together. I want to have a portfolio, and I want to go on and I want to move this. Right? That's what I always tell everybody. You take a relationship and you build that, so that way when you have to make the hard phone call or you have to make the hard text, you have created a relationship, and you know that it's not gotcha journalism. It's none of that. It is, hey, we have a hard story we have to tell. You know that we do. And so when you create that relationship, it's better. What Jimmy was saying is what we've all done as the older that we've gotten, right? When we were younger and we're starting out, like when I started in this business in 1997, I look back at who I am today and I don't like that guy. Right. Because I was so unsure of myself. I wanted to make everybody happy and I wanted to do all of these things. And it's not that I was, you don't know. It's what we talked on the phone. You don't know that you don't know. I just didn't know who I was. I didn't have a sense. So you go through that and it's those experiences. And as you age and through those experiences, you get that wisdom. And then you take the emotion out of it. It's like, look, my job, this is what my job is. I've got to do my job. My job is not to make everybody like me. It's my job is to be authentic and genuine in who I am and how I deal with the relationships in which I've built. So yeah, as you get older, it's, your filter starts breaking down because you're confident in who you are. You know what you're doing, and it gets easier to tell the truth. The older you get, because you know you're like, look, this is just who I am. This is where we are. And
do you feel there's an eye on you when you're
all the time?
So
there was a quote, and I'm not going. It's Zig Ziglar.
Yeah,
and I don't remember exactly what it's like, but. Live your life like everyone's watching, okay? In that, be who you are at all times, whether you're at the grocery store, whether you're in life. If you're living it that way, you're in your true and your authentic self, hopefully you don't have a whole lot to say you're sorry for. I'll tell you, it's hard. I think it's probably, I'm so used to it. It doesn't matter, but yeah, there's always this expectation. And I tell young people in journalism coming up, it may not seem like a lot to you, but the person that you're meeting for that first time or you're doing whatever, you have to treat that person like they're the only ones that matter, because that may be the only interaction that you ever have with them. And they're going to take every opinion of you based upon that 5-minute interaction.
Yeah.
So if you're not kind, if you're, and we, all of us have bad days, right? All of us have those bad days. The scary part is if I have a bad day, if I'm having an issue, and nobody knows that what you're going through on a given day. They don't know the struggles that you had before you walked out of the house, or maybe that heartbreaking phone call that you got right before you walked into a meeting. Nobody knows, and more importantly, they don't care. Yeah. They care about that 5-minute window that you have. And somebody asked me one time, they said, "How do you handle that?" And I said, never make it about you. In that 5 minutes, that short 5-minute window, you better be asking them more questions about them than they are of you.
Yep.
And because that's your responsibility, is to know about them. They've already got a pretty good idea of who you are because they see you doing this, that, and the other. But you want to make somebody smile.
Yep.
Ask them about themselves. Ask them, tell me about your day. Yep. And try to make that connection. And so that's, I think we can all do a better job of that. I've thought for a long time, especially coming out of another really contentious political cycle, we spend so much time talking about junk that doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we spent more time posting about, talking about the things that matter, how are you? I don't care about your politics. I don't care about all of that. I want to know who you are. I want to know what's going on in your life. Just a phone call, a text. Hey, what's going on? Tell me about you. Because that's really the only thing that matters.
I get asked all the time about city politics because, we've got a big project going on, and we're doing it privately, and should we have had city dollars involved? And I tell them, no, it's the best way for us to do it right now because of the way the climate is.
Right.
But I also say this. And I'll swear by this. I ran the alumni office at WT during a time that was very tumultuous for the university. Dr. Roach was the president. We had a faculty that had a vote of no confidence in our leader. It was a tough time.
We were broke.
It was just a tough time.
Broke.
And we'd renovated Old Main. We'd renovated the student center and had all these really nice conference rooms, but nobody would go sit in and talk about their differences. And I'll use city politics the same, or any other situation where there's differences of opinion. I tell you what, I would be happy to do anytime, anywhere, is if you'll bring all the parties in the room, I'll guarantee when it's all said and done, I can prove to them that we have more in common than we do differences.
Amen to that.
But they've got to get in the room together. And if you don't agree with me, that doesn't mean we can't like each other.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at in this world today, is that you're going to stay in your camp and I'm going to stay in mine. And I'm sorry to the general public that thinks that's cheesy, shame on you, because that's where we're at in this world. And so I would love to facilitate a discussion between a group of groups that don't get along or don't believe in the same thing, because I guarantee when it's all said and done, if we do exactly what you just said and throw all the stuff that doesn't matter and say, what do we agree on? That list will be far longer than the things we disagree on.
Because we don't have to agree on anything. And I don't want to agree on anything. That's boring.
It would be boring.
I don't want to do that. I want to have differences. I want to have dialogue. Luckily, when people ask me about politics, the great thing about, I can just say, I can't talk about it. I've got to be impartial. You do. I've got to handle that. Do I have my own opinions? I'm a human being, yes, but it's not my job to say, when people ask me about that kind of stuff, I'm like, maybe my closest of close friends, we can sit down and have a political discussion. Sure. Outside of that, I'm like, that's not my job. Yeah. My job is I need to say what's going on, and we need to move forward. But I think you're right. We're in a world, because we're living it on our phones and the social media, this, that, and the other. Look, set that down and go have lunch.
Yep.
Go grab a cup of coffee.
And leave the phone in the car.
And I'll tell you something, and my friends will tell you this. I hate texting. I want to hear your voice. It's fine for a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's like the other day we were texting, and I was like, I want to hear Lance. I called Lance, and because I want to hear, because that's when you know if they're doing okay.
Yeah.
In a text, I feel like it's so sanitary, or sometimes because I'm a communication what I do. I don't feel like that text ever gives it to me. And so if I can hear your voice, I know if you're doing okay. So that way, my friends joke because I call him all the time. If I call my one of my best friends, Matt Chamberlain, I said, Matt, how are you doing? I know based on how he answers that, whether it's the tone in his voice, if he pauses, I listen to all of that and I go, hey, well, let's go eat. Or that's when you know that there's something on. So, and let me tell you, I know that because most of my friends are texters. They're like, oh God, and he's calling again. But I want to hear the voice and I want to know that you're okay. And I don't feel like that's what I get if I'm texting. And so to sit down and we don't do that enough. As a matter of fact, after telling the Madison Ebush story, I'm like, when I walk out of here, I'm going to call Levi Ebush because I haven't heard his voice in a while. Yep. And I want to say, Levi, how are you? How's Shannon?
Tell him I said howdy.
I will.
You know what we're going to have to do? We're going to have Andy 2.0. We could be doing this all day.
He's amazing. You know why he's been at KMR since 1997? Just does an amazing job. So, Andy, we cannot thank you enough for your honesty today, for opening up. This was really enlightening.
Well, thank you, because it's easy when you're sitting across from two friends and you're just talking. And you're right, like the time went by very quickly. This is my favorite thing to do. My favorite thing is not the television thing and all of that. It's just to sit down with good people and have good discussion and
play a round of golf every once in a while.
Man, I tell you, I'm so sad because I know that season now is over.
Yeah,
that season of golf. But we need to get back out there. I do want to say a couple of things real quick. First off, Jimmy, thank you for what you do. Kids Inc. is such an important part. And I'm so proud that there is a forever link between Kids Inc. and Cal Farley's Boys Ranch, because Cal Farley and those men and women back in the day, knowing that we needed something like this, and that you've been able to carry the torch and advocate on behalf of these kids to have good facilities and not just go, oh, we'll get by, to say, no, here's an idea, here's a plan, we're going to take this into the next generation. You have been an advocate and a fighter for the kids of Amarillo for such a long time. Thank you for doing that. I know it's not always easy. And not only that, sometimes you have to become a family counselor, and you have been so important to the families and to your friends. And so thank you for doing that.
That's
Lance,
well said, Andy.
Thank you for not putting yourself on mute once your career at the paper was done. I remember when you were, and I thought, man, we're going to be losing somebody who is so incredibly passionate about these kids. And sports is one thing, but it's the coaches, it's the kids, it's the relationship. Thank you for not just wrapping that up and moving to Colorado, because I know how much you love Colorado, and not moving and giving up on being such a phenomenal storyteller, and finding ways to evolve your own career, because it really, people don't realize, like in journalism, especially in Amarillo, you don't get paid a lot. There's a lot of time that you spend. You never disengaged. Not one single day did you ever disengage from what you were passionate about, from sports and for those kids. You did not put yourself on mute. As a matter of fact, I think you poured yourself even more in to what we do here in Amarillo as a community, as a family. You poured in more. It was almost like there was this butterfly effect for you, that all of a sudden the paper, you got away from the paper and you realized, oh wait, I can do so much more. And so your career went in a wonderful direction. And I'm so proud that you did not let that part of your passion die. You kept it up. And so thank you for not going anywhere. Thank you for not moving. We lose so many good journalists and so many good members of our community who retire and go, okay, I'm going to go try my next thing. I'm going to move to Colorado Springs and I'm going to do this, or Boulder, or whatever. But you stayed in Amarillo and you continue to make an impact with those relationships. So thank you for not going anywhere.
Yep. That's very kind of you, man. I appreciate that. Yeah. Yep. I can't afford Colorado. You talk
about amen to that. I go and visit for a few days, and then I got to come back.
I got family up there, so that's where I'm staying. So,
Andy, thanks for doing this today.
We appreciate it. This was awesome today. Hey, we always say it. This was the Fieldhouse Podcast. It's a production of the Kids Inc. Sports Network, and we had a wonderful one today, but we will see you soon Thanks for joining us today.